Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Kimberly Cloud Show. I'm your host, Kimberly Cloud. I have a very special guest here for the show today. Can you go ahead and announce to the world who you are and where you're calling from?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Eric Brazau and I'm speaking to you from Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
Wow. And thank you. It's an honor because we actually had a talk, behind the scenes. And it's an honor to talk to you from
Thank you.
Starbucks to mall. And I just wanted to know about your past leading up into your present.
I'm originally from Montreal, and to get right into what brought me to where I am today, in the early 90s, you might not remember, this is before your time, there was a war that was being fought in Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
Canada was a big part of that. And the issue was, and of course, this is post 9/11. Oh, actually, no, this is prior to 9/11. The issue was that the Taliban had invaded Afghanistan, and from one day to the next, women were not allowed to leave their homes. They needed permission. They had to cover themselves completely. They had to wear the burqa. Women who had prior to that been doctors, lawyers, accountants, just like everywhere else, were no longer even allowed to leave the house. Children, girls, were not allowed to get an education, period. So I was receiving emails, chain emails.
What I have a question. What planet? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say planet. What country does this come from? Because I don't understand their religion.
Well, it's okay, but okay. So we will get into that. But so it's simply put, the Taliban or the Mujahideen, they believe in a certain Islam that's followed by the prophets, the Rashidun, the Caliphate, etc., the companions of the Prophet. So in 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, there was this big war going on. Canada was a part of that war. And the whole idea was to free the people of Afghanistan from this horrible ideology, which was, if you remember, if you've seen these women wearing complete blackness, completely covered, some would say that that's very off-putting.
So
So
I'm sorry. So the man, it's okay because I watched the episode. I forgot it was a very government channel with a very high end profile journalist. She interviewed somebody Islamic and he disrespected her and treated her like filth. So I don't understand that. A very Islamic man with a long beard, and it's okay for him to disrespect women because he looks down below women. I'm sorry, he's below. He's above.
But this is this a cultural thing? Is this a religious thing? Is it a mixture of both? Very well may be. So one day I'm riding my now we're going back to 1994, five, those times. I'm riding my bicycle in what's called NDG, Notre Dame de Grâce in Montreal. And I remember listening to the radio about our soldiers in Afghanistan fighting, dying to free the women of this ideology. And what did I see right in front of me, like 30 meters in front while I'm riding my bike, was people getting out of the minivan. And out of this minivan come two men wearing the white robes with the long beard. And the women who came out of the minivan were completely covered in black, complete, 100%. There was not even a place for their mouth to breathe air and to talk. And over their eyes was a material so that you couldn't even see their eyeballs. When I saw this, I was in shock. It was like, whoa, how could this be? At that point, I said, this is very strange. And I didn't particularly
Can
think
I
it was
ask you a question about that? So
sure.
the women that are covered, I thought that when you with okay, I've seen episodes in Hollywood that when you smother somebody slowly, you know, you would make them cover their mouth like with something of a sort of material, because that's like you don't see the men covering up, but you see the women covering up.
That's
And
correct.
I don't get, what are you trying to make us die slowly? What are you trying to do?
Okay, in brief, just so you understand the concept, and this is where everything comes down to in terms of that wearing of clothes. Men, may I ask what you're 35, 30, 29?
So I'm 38.
Oh, okay. Well, they okay. So men have a different libido than women. Can we agree on that?
Yes,
Sexually. Okay. Like
yes.
if you remember when you, okay. So a man can see a woman and sometimes he wants what he wants just because he saw what he saw. You understand what I'm getting at, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Whereas women, because women are women, it's usually different than that. And also, when you have the whole reason for sex is that a baby could come. If a woman were to just have sex, she could get pregnant, and then that could be an issue in her life. Whereas a man has sex, he just walks away and he's had his pleasure. End of story. So, in the Islamic concept, from what I've read and understood, and let me finish this, very important. If a man sees a woman, what is the possibility? He could become sexually aroused. If he becomes sexually,
95% of the time.
well, there you go. That's why men are men, because okay. So if a woman allows herself to be seen in any form and a man becomes sexually aroused and rapes her, well, whose fault is that?
Allah.
Or the woman's, correct. So
So why
women,
they not blaming the God, but they blaming a woman? Because so you're saying
Kimberly,
we have to cover up. I'm just want to
Kimberly,
know.
Kimberly, you're approaching this from trying to understand the logic or to argue the logic. If I may, this we can we'll be here for 10 hours going around in a circle. It's like, would you try to understand the logic of a I mean, animals, lions do what they do, crocodiles do what they do, fire does what it does. I mean, it's not a
But
question
in
of,
Western civilization, like, almost like, I don't know if Canada is considered Western civilization too,
of
but in
course,
the United States, okay, thank you. So
Britain,
I don't know all my history. So
Britain, Scotland, Ireland, that's who Germany, that's who founded Canada, the French, France.
so Western civilizations, I'm glad that I'm in, because for me, I feel like that's a problem. This is why we have different designs. This is why we have different things. So I just feel like we should, you know, I, I don't know. So how do you feel about the Islamic culture, like in your point of view, as far as a man?
Well, that's a good question, but I would like to answer a question before I answer that question, if I may. So, in 2000, just after 9/11, actually, I moved to Toronto. While in Toronto, there started to become more issue with Islam because in Toronto, there's just a lot more Muslim population. I was in a restaurant in the year 2003, 4 maybe, and I was having a bantering conversation with some men wearing beards. This was a taxi stand. It was like a small little restaurant open at late at night. And I used to go there often. And I was having a conversation and I said to everyone, ha ha ha, nobody wants Sharia law to come to Canada. And everyone responded, well, of course we do. We are Muslims. We want Sharia law. And I responded, ha
Yeah,
ha ha, you're making a joke. Because in Sharia law, there's no dancing, there's no women, there's women have to cover, there's no music. Of course you don't. And everyone got very angry and said, excuse me, sir, we're not making any joke. We are Muslims, and Sharia law is what all Muslims want to live by. And then I went, ha ha ha, okay. And then I started to think, do Muslims in Canada really want Islam to be the law of Canada? And then I started to do research. This was again back in 2003, 4. And off I went on my quest. And the more research I did, the more I started to lose my mind. And that led me down a path, which eventually led me to printing flyers, saying things, becoming very politically active, and ultimately getting arrested and being in jail for
Tell me
over
about
3 years.
that actual day. Take me back to that actual day you went to jail for political views.
Okay, so I went in and out of jail a few times over 5 years, but I did two stretches of like a 1 year each time, and then a 3 months and a 4 months. So the first time I went to jail was, you might recall the movie called, okay, remember Benghazi?
No,
Okay,
I
that's okay.
don't.
Okay, so Benghazi, Hillary Clinton, there was that movie Innocence of Muslims. The world went on fire. This is again 2004 or 5. And Hillary Clinton released an official statement where she apologized for free speech and said that free speech should not be used to denigrate the religion of Islam, the noble religion. At which point I lost my mind and I said, screw this. We have to support free speech. We have to support artists who want to make their statement. So I
Does
printed
the Democrats like Islam? You said it's more democracy, right? In Islam? Am I right? Am I wrong?
I'm not sure what your question is.
Is the democracy like, do who support Islam?
Well, it's
Democrats
not
or
okay.
Republicans?
Everyone, for the most part, everyone supports freedom of religion, correct?
Yes, but it's
Okay, end of
yeah,
story. So Islam is supported because we support freedom of religion.
but
That
it's suppressing the women.
right, but now you're getting into, but what does Islam support, etc., etc. That's another conversation. But within,
Beautiful women have to cover up their faces because they're afraid that men is gonna attack them and it's gonna be their fault.
well,
That is sick.
that's a narrative, a powerful narrative, a powerful understanding of Islam. That's a theory. That's a river of thought, a very powerful, influential river. Now, there are imams, and Islam absolutely says that men should not rape women, no question. Now, however, if the rape could be attributed to the woman and it's her fault, well, then it's not really rape anymore. So, example, even in our culture, if you, Kimberly, walked down the street completely naked, right? Completely, and you walked into a neighborhood where there's only men, right? And bad things would happen to you, people would say that that's your fault.
But in the Western culture, I wear a jacket
No, I
everywhere I
understand.
go. Even independent, I adapt it everywhere. And if I feel uncomfortable where I can't show my body like in a professional outfit, I will cover up. Now that is common sense.
But
But to
Kimberly,
demand somebody to cover up in all black
Kimberly,
and cover up just their that's
Kimberly,
crazy.
the way you are dressed right now, that I see your face, I see your hair, in some Muslim neighborhoods, countries, places, you would be, the way you're dressed right now is prostitution in their perspective. In their perspective. So it's a question of degrees. So, for example, have you seen some of the dresses the girls wear in the Oscars on the red carpet, etc., the Kardashians, etc.?
Well, that's their opinion.
Sure, I'm not saying
Don't
right
want
or
to get
wrong.
into
I'm
that.
just saying that that some people would say that those dresses are a bit over the top. It's a bit much. I'm
you
not.
know, all I can say is they are allowed of
Yes,
expression.
Kimberly,
Everybody has creativity, and that's what the Western culture, like you and me were talking about outside of this live video, is about, right?
correct. So in Western ideology, ideas, that's the way we prefer to live life. So right now, you're sitting in a chair. If some man were to walk by and say good morning or good afternoon and smile and walk away, that would be a pleasant exchange.
Yes.
But if that were to happen to you while you were sitting at the same table in Saudi Arabia, that would be considered a crime.
Well, they need to get used to people like me and people like other people that is going to come in. Women are tired of this. They you know, you got the Taliban executing women, you got Islam suppressing women, you got Mexican people killing their own women in Mexico.
Kimberly,
This is sick and
Kimberly,
femicide.
Kimberly, if again, when you say suppressing, some women who live under Islam see that as liberation. I'm just saying that's some will say I'm liberated now because I no longer have to put on makeup. I no longer have to let people see my face. I can hide behind the face veil and I feel liberated. So women actually do say this. Again, Kimberly, it's not about right and wrong, which you continually are going back to that understanding. It's just a question of that's their realities. That's the
Understood.
way they prefer it. So in the old days, every culture was in its country. So if you went to Africa, there was a culture. If you went to Belgium, there was a culture. If you went to Italy, there was a culture. If you went to Canada, there was a culture. All of those cultural, and if you went to Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Saudi Arabia, there was a culture. What's happening today is
What
there's
is your
no,
culture again? I have to cut you off, but what is your culture again? What do you call it again?
well, I was born and raised in Canada. My parents come from Poland and Lithuania, but that's a Western civilization. So that's the Western civilizational culture. But more and more, the Islamic culture, the African culture, the Asian culture, the Chinese culture, all of these cultures are now coming to the West. And so now all cultures are becoming melted together. So that includes the Islamic cultures, the Islamic ideology, some of it.
I have a question. You, since you know a lot about Islam, the elite of Islam, the main president, I just want to know, would he do he allows, like, what kind of things that he allows other than what you just told me
Okay,
in Islam values?
okay. In Islam, there is no pope. There's no president. That doesn't exist. You have councils, the European Council of Muslims, the European Council of the European Imams. There's several very large councils that you have. You have other councils in North
And they're
America,
all
Canada.
men.
Pardon?
They're all men, right?
No, there's one woman for every. There are
10
women,
men.
but usually not. No, but for yes, you could say they're all men. 99.7%. Um, these councils base Islam upon the doctrine of Islam, the books, the holy books, the actions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the words of the Prophet, the hadith, the four kingdoms that existed directly after the death of the Prophet Muhammad. What did they do? How did they govern their civilization?
Was
What were
Muhammad
the,
in the Bible?
pardon?
Was Muhammad in the Bible like the original Genesis or whatever it's called, like the New
No,
Testament or the Old
no,
Testament?
no, no. You cannot. The Prophet Muhammad from Islam is 1400 years after the death of Jesus Christ. 700 years after the death of Jesus Christ. He appears nowhere in the Old Testament or the New Testament.
What
However,
race or religion was Judah?
pardon?
What was Judah? He was a Jew, or was he what
You talking
who
about Judea?
yeah, Judah, the one that kissed Jesus Christ, like
Oh, the guy who sold Jesus for 30 pounds of
yeah,
silver. He was a
yeah,
Christian. Well, he was a Jew, actually. Yeah.
a Jew. Did he did because I have to know after how old was Judah? Like, did Judah die after Jesus Christ? Like, I don't know the whole story.
Oh, I don't know that. That's a detail I would not be familiar with, never knew.
Okay.
But so coming back to, if you read the Hadith, if you read the Quran, if you read the Sunnah, if you read the rulings, like the legal framework of the past 1400 years of Islam, that is what present day Islam is based upon. The precedents. What was Islam 700 years ago? What was it 1,000 years ago? What was it 1400 years ago? What were the words and the actions and the deeds of the Prophet Muhammad? That is what they base Islam upon. So, in the Hadith, it says very clearly that homosexuals must be executed. However, there is leeway on how that execution must occur. They could either be burned to death alive, they could have their head chopped off, they could be thrown off a high cliff, like very high, and stoned to death.
You
Now,
know, one, I don't want to disrespect Islamic values because they done had it for a while, but it is 2022, and what they are doing is just straight sick. We are in times where we have shots that we three drug cocktails that we can give people now. And you're stoning people, you're burning people, you're pushing people off the cliff. That is just sick.
well,
That is sick.
some people may be of that opinion, yes. However, others are not of that opinion and prefer to live by the words of God, of Allah, of the Prophet Muhammad. Many people believe, Muslims especially, that the Quran and Islam is the final true message of God, and that by listening to this
Because
message and living,
what they don't get is that God is observing them for them to learn from their mistakes and grow versus stay in modern times of their
Kimberly,
religion.
Kimberly, you say it's a mistake. They don't. Again, matter of
Understood.
opinion. So, what if I told you that for many and for many Muslims, this world doesn't really exist? That this world is only a practice for the real world, which is paradise that will come. And the highest place in paradise is someone who dies for the cause of Allah, and he will get 72 virgins in paradise. Now, the most spectacular thing about virgins in paradise is that when you break her hymen today, tomorrow it repairs itself, and so she's a virgin forever. There's a lot of very interesting aspects about Islam that people are not aware, that they need to understand the full context, contextualization, as they say, to give you a better, deeper understanding. So,
And this is in your book, right?
yes, all of my book juxtaposes all of these understandings so that we can better contextualize the perspectives of what is the true Islam as opposed to what is the fake Islam. So you've heard of the whole idea of misinformation, correct?
Correct.
The question always is, who is misinforming? Who's doing the misinforming? Who's doing the misunderstanding? So
Was any Islamic values ever in the Bible?
no, no, no.
Because
Lots
I
of
know they worship their God Allah, but I just want to know that any of their Islamic views, their religion, whatever they created after Christ died 700 years ago, do it have any relevance?
it has a lot of relevance to the Old Testament and even to some of the New Testament. Mary, the mother of Jesus, Jesus is a prophet. Some people say that some of the ideas of Judaism have been transported into some of the stories in the Quran. So there's a lot of overlap. Yes. So, but you asked me the question about the beginning. So when I came, so I started to listen to these videos after the restaurant and understanding that perhaps there are Muslim populations that would like Islam to come and be the dominant ideology of Canada. I started to listen to videos on YouTube and I lost my mind. I had a business. Um, I was a contractor. However, I started spending 3, 4 hours every day, late at night, listening to videos and reading about Islam. And I started to go crazy to the point where I became obsessed. People didn't like me anymore because I was talking about this subject all the time. And I remember being at a at a dinner party, Christmas time, might have been Easter, Thanksgiving. Okay. And I said, what will you people say when Muslims go in the street with machine guns and shoot people at random? And that's many people said, Eric, you have a mental problem. You need psychological counseling.
Understood. Understood.
That's what they
I'm
said to
listening.
me. And all of my friends were they said they wanted to do an intervention. They wanted to take me to the psychiatric hospital. In the end, what happened was so okay. So I'm jumping here. In 2003, there was the innocence of Muslims. Hillary Clinton said the First Amendment was not made to insult the great religion of Islam. I made flyers, very insulting flyers about the Prophet Muhammad, about Islam. I was walking around downtown Toronto, telling people Islam is a pedophile religion, Prophet Muhammad is the devil, blah, blah, et cetera, et cetera. Very bad things. A week later, the police arrested me. They pressed charges against me. They brought me to jail. They would not give me bail. I couldn't get bail for these charges. 10 months later, I was found guilty and sentenced to time served for willful promotion of hate against Islam. Fast forward to 2015, November 13, 2015, there was the attack in Paris. Do you remember that one? It was very large. 500 people got shot, 140 people were killed in 2015 in Paris, in France.
What happened with that?
Well, there was 3 simultaneous attacks in one nightclub called the Bataclan. They opened fire because it's a nightclub, crowded nightclub, live music, and they shot 80 people in the nightclub. They shot 80 people dead. They had machine guns. Imagine you walk into a nightclub with a machine gun or automatic weapon and
How do you walk into a nightclub with a machine gun? How do you even get that type of technology unless it's government related? But that's
No,
just my
okay,
opinion.
no, please, let's not go there.
I'm
Very
not.
simply, they had machine guns. They went into a nightclub. They also went into the street and they shot people at a restaurant in the street. In the end of the day, within about 40 minutes or less, they shot 500 people. They killed 140 and they maimed a lot of people. I went to Dundas Square and lost my mind. I was screaming and yelling and arguing and talking, and there was like 40 people around me, 70 people. There was a lot of commotion. In the end, the police came while I was there and arrested me for causing a disturbance because I'm disturbing the peace. I'm right downtown and making a lot of commotion. They charged me, and then there was one person who said he heard me say, I want a gun to shoot and kill all Muslims. Of course, I did not say that, but this person said that. So the police arrested me, and ultimately I was charged with incitement to commit genocide. 10 months later, the
Did you
charges were,
say it?
pardon?
Did you say it?
Of course not.
I believe you.
I
I
wouldn't.
believe you.
That's a very silly thing
Can
to
I
say.
ask you something?
Sure.
What do you believe was the culprit behind what happened? Like, what do you think was the culprit behind why they believe allegedly they heard you say that?
Oh, I was arguing for about 1 hour in the Dundas Square with people screaming, yelling, arguing. One guy who was also a gay Muslim, I found out later, he just wanted me to be arrested. And he knew that he could say that. And how could I prove that I didn't say it? So that was just it was just a bald faced lie. In the end, we went to what's called, we went to kind of like a mini trial, a pre trial before the big trial, because this is a big case. And the judge at this pre-trial said, I do not believe the witness. The witness is very uncredible. I think the prosecution is shoehorning Mr. Brazau into a crime. That's what the judge said. And at that point, things changed, and I was granted bail. And they dropped the charges from incitement to commit genocide to causing a disturbance. Just so you understand, causing a disturbance is some man walking down the street 3 o'clock in the morning, pissing in the middle of the street and screaming and yelling, and he's drunk. It's a misdemeanor. You go to jail for 15 days, 10 days. I was in jail for 10 months. At the end of it all, I was found guilty, or I pled guilty to causing a disturbance. There we go. So that
You
was
know,
my.
even though your charges got dismissed, you will forever, if the police were to look you up,
No,
you
they
will
weren't
forever have a
dismissed. They weren't
charge.
dismissed. They were brought down. So instead of being, it's like instead of being charged for murder, I was charged for stepping on your toes.
Okay.
Big difference. Huge difference. So today I have a criminal record for causing a disturbance. Not that it's such a big deal, but that's what it is. That was in 2017. Very close to after that time, I understood that I needed to revisit and re-understand what it is that I'm doing. And then I embarked on a journey, and I put aside everything that I used to do, used to believe, and I started again from zero, from scratch, to understand what is Islam based solely on North American imams' teachings. Canadian imams, what are they teaching? So now I no longer care about Saudi Arabia and Yemen and Qatar and Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Pakistan. Don't care about that Islam. I only want to understand North American Islam, because where do I live?
In
North
North
America.
America.
I don't live in Yemen, Pakistan. Also, many people will say that the Islam in Pakistan is different than the Islam in Canada, because it's two different places, right? And that the Islam over there is the extreme crazy Islam, but the Islam here in Canada and North America is the good Islam. And I say, okay, so let's take that. I believe that, and let's learn. And this book is basically my first real foray into putting together everything. Not everything, it's not possible to put everything, but if you read this book, and it's actually a shorter book, it's only 40,000 words, it would give you a very good understanding of what the leadership is in Canada and North America is saying Islam is. What do they say Islam is? And what is it that the reformers, the nice Muslims, quote
Can I
unquote,
ask you a good question? This is a good question.
sure.
How many Islamics are all over the world?
Is it one?
Is it
It's like,
everywhere in the world?
oh yes, it's everywhere in the world. It's why do I not know this number? It's, is it 2 billion, 3 billion? Right now, Catholicism, Christianity might be 50%, might be 51% of the total global population. Islam might be 49% of the total global population. In
Say that again.
Islam might be 49% of the total global population. They
Okay.
say that in France, by the year 2050, Islam will be the most popular religion in France, more than Christianity. In many places of Europe,
But
there are
France is a
cities.
cool country or whatever, you know?
Yeah, I've been to France. It's a
It's
very,
very quiet.
I'm not sure. Are you aware of what happened to the teacher in
No,
20, what was it, 2 years ago? Maybe it's 3 years ago now.
no.
He, there's a teacher called Samuel Paty.
Uh-huh.
He had a class and he was teaching them about freedom of speech. Or he was a history teacher, high school, and he told his class about freedom of speech, expression, and in the class he used the example of the cartoons about the Prophet Muhammad in his class. 2 weeks later, a Muslim migrant from Chechnya took a bus 100 kilometers to the school and in broad daylight cut his head off while he was alive. Like he killed him by slowly cutting off his head. Now, this also happened 3 days later. There was three ladies that were stabbed outside of the church in Nice. One of them who was also beheaded. There's been a lot of beheadings of priests and individuals in France.
So literally he executed him by cutting off his head
Yeah,
slowly.
yeah.
That is sick. That is very sick.
Well, it, if you go to my website, learningislam.ca, there's a whole section on just Paris and all of that incident. Like there's maybe 30 videos of the imams talking about what happened in Paris. And some imams will tell you very straight what this man did was somewhat incorrect because what he did could bring more problems to the Muslim community. It could bring disrepute on the Muslim community. It could bring negative consequences to the Muslim community. But it is somewhat recognized that what he did is justified because the teacher showed insulting prophet. The teacher showed to the class insulting cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. So not
Where did
all.
they get these images in their mind from to put it on a paper though at that young of an age?
Oh no. The teacher was showing images that were made 10 years ago that led to Muslim riots. And so the teacher was saying, in our country, we have free speech. And because of these cartoons, there was a riot. So he showed the cartoons that caused the riot. And because he showed those cartoons, he ended up getting beheaded.
The
That's
riot was against the Islamic views.
say again.
Was this riot against the Islamic views? That's why the riot, these images caused the riot.
The images caused the riot, yes, and so the riot was so that nobody else would ever show images or make images that are disrespectful to the religion of Islam. So is the duty of all Muslims are supposed to protect the religion of Islam in their capacity. That's part of the doctrine of Islam,
Do
part of
me
the
a
teaching.
favor.
Sure.
I want to learn more about your book. What I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to do because we have to cut this. I
Sure.
hope LinkedIn, I'm in prayers that everything I said by debating with this wonderful smart man won't get me kicked off, but I would love to have him onto a cameo where I'm able to talk more in depth about what's in his book. Now, I plan on putting his commercial onto my platform. Warning, viewer discretion is advised because it will make you mad. Now, the reason why is because so many people are being suppressed. And so I want to, I'll talk to you after
Sure.
offset. And how can, where do you see yourself? We really didn't talk about your past, present, and future. So where, where do you see your book going in the future?
Okay. Where I see my book going, the whole purpose of my
Yes.
book is to get people to appreciate how Islam is contributing to the development of Western civilization and society. That's number one. Number two is to get people to understand that what you might think is the crazy bad Islam, that's not the good Islam, might actually be the true Islam. And the Islam that you might prefer might actually not be the true Islam. It's not for me or for you or for us to decide what is and what is not Islam. We cannot. But if you read the book, the imams and the scholars and the sheikhs will help you understand what is the real Islam, or what is the Islam that 90% of the Muslims believe is the real Islam, as opposed to the 1% who believe something else. So the book and what I'm about now is to have an open understanding of where Islam is truly bringing us as a civilization. And whether it's not about good or bad, it's just about the realities of.
What I want to discuss first with you on the second cameo is if you, I don't know if you've written it down or not in your book, but it's about Allah. Since you know all the Islamic views, I want to know more about their God, Allah, and I'm gonna do my research as well. And I want to
If
know.
I may, if I may
Yes,
say
sir.
something,
Sir.
I used to be about in the past. I used to read the Quran and argue or think I understood Islam from the Quran. And that's a mistake because it doesn't matter what we think we know. It's not about what I can tell you. I can actually tell you nothing. All I tell you is what they say. I bring to you the information from Islam. I'm not a scholar. I don't speak Arabic. But if the Imam himself says that the Islam tells us that we must not allow women to leave the house, and he's an Imam who has a big following, who's respected,
Can I ask you a question
sure.
before we end? I have so many questions for you. So, does a woman get a right to a religion, or is this all man-made things?
Well, if I was living in a Muslim country, I would prefer to be a man, for sure.
I love that
I mean,
answer.
no question.
God.
I mean,
Do
it
you have
actually,
any
as
ending, like for 1 to 2 minutes? Do you have any ending on your Islamic views? I'll let
yes,
you have the floor.
it's not. Oh, how have my views changed about Islam?
You said, yeah.
Wow. My views, I've come to understand. Okay, my views, it's not about whether my views have changed or not changed. I have come to understand we have to deal with realities as they are. We can't wish it was different. We can't, it's not, I wish it was this, I wish it was that, I wish we had, we cannot do that. Realities are realities. End of story. Once we understand realities, then we can move forward. That's where I've changed. Nothing more.
Well
What are the
said.
realities that are coming next week, next month, next year, next decade, next 50 years?
And I'm gonna leave it at that. I cannot wait to have you back on the show. You better come. So thank you everyone for joining my show. Thank you. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and thank you for coming on and joining my virtual studio. That's the book, and I will be playing the commercial today. Okay, I'm going to reroute all of the commercials. Okay, y'all take care, be safe, and I will see y'all again. Hold on.